Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a problem that I'm sure drives a lot of you nuts. Why do the organizations we count on, companies, governments, nonprofits, why do they seem to have the worst memory?
Just think about it for a second. A place you've worked, maybe a school you went to, or even your local city council. Have you ever gotten that feeling that they're just constantly hitting the reset button? Well, there's actually a name for that. It's called institutional amnesia. And you see this amnesia pop up in all these frustratingly familiar ways, right? A new CEO comes in and boom, that 5-year plan everyone just spent a year on, gone. A new administration takes over and those critical long-term projects just dissolve. And maybe the most painful one, all the tough lessons learned from the last crisis are totally forgotten just in time for the next one. It's a cycle of constantly starting from scratch that we're going to unpack today. Now, when we try to figure out why this keeps happening, we usually point to what I like to call the usual suspects. You've heard them before. We blame it on bad leaders, or a weak culture, or maybe incentives that are just all wrong. But what if those aren't the real problem? What if they're just symptoms of something much, much deeper?
Okay, so let's look at how we typically try to fix this. For decades, we've basically been throwing the same 3 tools at this problem of institutional forgetting. But as we're about to see, these common fixes, well, they might actually be designed to fail from the start.
So, fix number 1, the classic go-to, let's get a stronger board of directors. Or, add more layers of oversight. The idea here is that these folks will be the guardians of the institution's memory, its true purpose. They're supposed to hold the line even when leaders change. But here is the massive catch, and this quote just nails it. Boards have turnover, too. And more importantly, their entire power is based on discretion. They are literally empowered to change their minds and change course. They have zero formal obligation to stick with what the last board decided. So instead of being guardians of memory, they often end up being the ones pushing the reset button. All right, so if boards aren't the magic bullet, what about fix number 2? Data. Let's just create better KPIs, key performance indicators, and design smarter incentives to keep everybody laser-focused on those long-term goals. And again, this is where the logic breaks down. The insight here is so sharp. Incentives are actually pretty good at disciplining what happens within a certain time frame, like a single quarter or a year. But they have no power to enforce stewardship across time. A new leader comes in, they set new KPIs, new incentives, and the whole cycle of forgetting just gets reinforced. Okay, so if the formal structures like boards and incentives don't work, what's left? Well, we usually fall back on the human element. Fix number 3. We just need a stronger culture. We need to hire and develop more principled leaders who will just personally choose to carry that institutional memory forward because it's the right thing to do.
And this right here is the absolute heart of the problem. Relying on good people to just do the right thing is a fragile, unreliable strategy because culture can erode and even the best, most amazing leader still inherits a system that gives them total permission to start over from scratch. So here's the bottom line. When memory is just a personal choice, forgetting is basically guaranteed every single time the people change. So if it's not the people, and it's not the culture, and it's not the incentives, then what on earth is it? Well, this is where we get this incredible shift in perspective. The argument is that institutional forgetting isn't a people problem at all. It is a fundamental problem of design. It's in the architecture. And here's the core diagnosis. We give leaders the authority to decide things right now, in the present. But we don't build in any formal obligation for them to steward what came before them. So all that power we give to a role, a CEO, a director, you name it, it all just collapses into the personal discretionary choice of whoever happens to be in that chair today. It's not bound by the past, and it can't bind the future. This slide just lays it out so clearly. On the one hand, you have her current flawed model. We tie authority to a person for a temporary term, which makes remembering the past totally optional. But the big idea, the architectural fix, is to flip that. What if we bound authority to time itself? That would make certain core commitments persistent, obligatory. It would transform memory from a nice-to-have into a mandatory feature of the system itself. So if the problem is a fundamental break in continuity over time, then the solution has to be a way to build a bridge. And this new architectural principle has a name. It's called authority continuity. So what exactly is authority continuity? Well, you can think of it as a state where certain really crucial commitments are basically locked in. They have to be carried forward no matter who's in charge. It's about making the stewardship of those core things non-negotiable. It literally builds memory directly onto the structure of power. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't this make organizations super rigid and unable to change? But it's actually the opposite. The trick is to separate what must persist from what needs to be flexible. You create this stable spine of core obligations, the things that absolutely cannot be dropped, while giving leaders total freedom on the day-to-day stuff, like strategy, tactics, and how they lead their teams. You get the best of both worlds, stability and agility. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But how would you actually do it? Well, this isn't just an abstract idea. The paper actually proposes a really concrete governance tool designed to put authority continuity into practice. And it's called a stewardship continuity schedule. Now, this is not just another strategic plan or some boring policy document. You should think of it more like a binding contract with the organization's future self. It's a formal document that lays out exactly what obligations have to be maintained and for how long, no matter who's sitting in the corner office. And this table just shows you how different this tool is. A strategy asks, what should we do next? A policy asks, how should we make decisions? But a continuity schedule asks this totally new and honestly game-changing question. What must not be allowed to decay? It is a tool designed specifically to fight organizational forgetting. So, let's bring it all home. What is the real payoff of thinking this way? Why does this structural shift matter so much? Let's connect this whole solution right back to those frustrating problems we started with. Well, when you adopt an architecture like this, the effects are profound. Suddenly, mission drift stops being this inevitable thing that just happens. It becomes an irrational choice. Your institution becomes way less fragile, way more resilient to leadership turnover. And for the first time, it can actually learn and build on its knowledge over the long haul. But maybe the biggest thing is this. Memory is no longer a fragile personal virtue. It becomes a durable, structural property of the organization itself. So if there is one single thing to take away from this entire analysis, it's this. Our institutions don't have amnesia because of bad people or weak cultures. They forget because the very way we design them, the way we structure authority, structurally permits them to. It encourages it. And that really leaves us with a provocative question to ask about our own organizations. Is its memory fragile, stored only in the heads of a few people who could walk out the door tomorrow? Or is it tough and resilient, built directly into its very design? Thanks so much for joining us on The Explainer.